He thought humiliating her would be funny, but 14 seconds later, his best fighter would be tapping out for air. Rachel Monroe walked into the gym in worn sneakers and a plain hoodie, and the room already judged her. Beginner's class is Tuesday, someone laughed. Coach Derek smirked. We don't train tourists. Then he pointed. Fine. 1 round. Tyler, go easy. The black belt stepped forward, confident, fast, too fast. Rachel didn't rush. 1 shift. 1 grip. 1 silent turn. Tyler's body hit the mat, tap, tap, tap. The entire room froze. No music. Just his breath breaking. Derek couldn't speak. Rachel stepped back, calm, untouched. Someone whispered, "Who is she?" And that was the question no one there could answer. He thought humiliating her would be easy, but he had no idea he had just stepped into something far beyond his control. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and quiet strength, stay with this story. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall glass windows of iron-forged Jiu-Jitsu Academy, casting long golden streaks across the polished mats. The air carried a mix of effort and discipline, the soft thud of movement, controlled breathing, and the quiet authority of experience. It was a place where respect was supposed to be earned, not assumed. Coach Derek Shaw stood at the center of the room, arms crossed, his voice cutting clean through the space as he instructed his advanced students. At 42, he carried himself like a man who had built something worth defending, his black belt tied with precision, his reputation even tighter. Around him, athletes moved with confidence, each step rehearsed, each motion deliberate. And then the door opened. Rachel Monroe stepped in quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Her sneakers were worn at the edges, her gray hoodie plain, unremarkable. She paused just inside the entrance, taking in the room with steady eyes that didn't wander, didn't shrink, didn't ask for permission. But the room noticed her anyway. It always did. One student slowed his stretch, glancing sideways. Another leaned in, whispering just loud enough. She looks lost. A small ripple of amusement passed through the group, subtle but sharp. Rachel walked forward, her steps measured, neither rushed nor hesitant. She approached the front desk where a clipboard sat waiting, names neatly written in confident handwriting. She picked up the pen, her fingers steady, and wrote her name without a word. "You knew?" the receptionist asked, her tone polite but distant. Rachel nodded once. "Just looking to train." The response was simple. Too simple for the room that thrived on proving things. Across the mat, Tyler Briggs, one of the Academy's top black belts, straightened up, rolling his shoulders as he watched her. He was used to being watched, used to being the standard others measured themselves against. He exchanged a quick glance with another student, a smirk forming without effort. Coach Derek noticed the shift in attention and turned, his gaze landing on Rachel. It was the kind of look that sized a person up in seconds, measuring worth by appearance alone. He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate, the room subtly quieting as he approached. "This isn't a drop-in fitness class," he said, his voice calm but edged with something colder. "We take training seriously here." Rachel met his gaze, her expression unchanged. "That's why I'm here." For a brief moment, something flickered in Derek's eyes. Not respect. Not yet. Just curiosity, quickly buried under habit. A student behind him let out a soft chuckle. "Beginner's class is Tuesday," he added, louder this time, inviting others to join in. A few did. Not loudly. Just enough. Rachel didn't react. She didn't look away either. The room shifted again, uncertain for a second before settling back into its rhythm. Derek tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You trained before?" he asked. Rachel paused, just long enough to matter. "A little." The answer drew another quiet wave of amusement. Tyler stepped closer now, arms crossed, his confidence filling the space around him. "You might want to start slow," he said. "People get overwhelmed here." Rachel nodded once, as if acknowledging something deeper than his words. The silence that followed stretched just a second too long. Derek broke it with a small, dismissive exhale. "We'll see," he said, turning back toward the mat. But the room didn't fully return to normal. Not quite. Something had shifted, subtle but undeniable. Because while everyone else had already decided who Rachel Monroe was, she hadn't said nearly enough for them to be right. And somewhere beneath the polished surface of that room, beneath the laughter and quiet judgment, something patient had just begun to wake up. The kind of thing that didn't need attention. The kind of thing that didn't ask for approval. The kind of thing that, when it finally moved, left no room for doubt. The room didn't know it yet. But it was already too late to take it back. The first drill began without ceremony, the kind that separated those who belonged from those who would quietly disappear after a week. Coach Derek clapped his hands once, sharp and controlled, and the room moved instantly, partners pairing off with practiced ease. Names were called, positions taken, and the rhythm of the academy resumed as if Rachel Monroe had already faded into the background. But she had not. She stood near the edge of the mat, watching, her posture relaxed yet precise, as if she were measuring more than just movement. "You need a partner," a voice asked, though the tone suggested it was more obligation than invitation. It was a younger student, maybe in his early 20s, adjusting his white belt with nervous hands. Rachel gave a small nod. "That would be fine." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting correction, but none came. Coach Derek was watching from a distance, arms crossed again, his attention divided but never absent. The drill was simple, controlled transitions from one position to another, nothing flashy, nothing that required attention beyond discipline. The kind of exercise that revealed habits more than talent. As they began, Rachel moved carefully, following the instructions exactly, neither rushing nor lagging behind. Her partner relaxed slightly, reassured by what he assumed was inexperience. "Just take it slow," he said, offering advice that sounded more like a warning. Rachel did not respond. She simply adjusted her position with quiet precision, her movements efficient, almost economical. Across the mat, Tyler Briggs was demonstrating a variation with another advanced student, his execution sharp, confident, designed to be seen. A few students paused to watch, admiration clear in their eyes. He noticed, of course. He always did. "Control is everything," Tyler said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Without control, you have nothing." His gaze drifted briefly toward Rachel, just long enough to make the point without saying it directly. A few nearby students smirked. The message landed exactly where it was meant to. Rachel's partner shifted, attempting the next step of the drill, but his balance faltered slightly. Rachel adjusted instinctively, her hand guiding the movement in a way that corrected the mistake before it fully formed. It was subtle. Almost invisible. But it was not beginner behavior. The young man blinked, confused for a second, then continued, assuming it had been luck. "Again," he said. They reset. This time, he moved with more confidence, a little faster. Rachel followed, matching his pace without effort. When he overcommit, she redirected the motion with a slight shift of weight, placing him exactly where the drill required. No force. No strain. Just timing. He paused, looking at her differently now. "Have you really only trained a little?" Rachel met his eyes for a brief second. "Enough," she said quietly. The word hung there longer than expected. Across the room, Coach Derek's attention sharpened. He had seen that adjustment. The kind of correction that did not come from guessing. He stepped closer, not enough to interrupt, but enough to observe without being obvious. Tyler noticed the shift too, his expression tightening almost imperceptibly. The room continued, but something underneath had changed. Rachel's partner attempted the sequence again, this time watching her more closely than the instructor. Each time he made a mistake, she corrected it before it could become obvious, her movement small, controlled, precise. Not showing off. Not teaching. Just, knowing. A nearby student leaned in, whispering to another. She is not moving like a beginner. The response was immediate. She is probably just lucky. But the doubt had already taken root. Derek stepped in finally, his voice cutting through the low murmur. Switch partners. The command was casual, but the intent was not. Rachel's partner stepped back, relieved and confused at the same time. Tyler wiped his hands on his GI and walked forward slowly, a faint smile returning to his face, the kind that came from being certain of the outcome before it began. I got this one, he said. No one argued. The room adjusted, space opening naturally around them. Rachel turned to face him, her expression unchanged, her breathing steady, as if nothing about the moment required more than she had already given. Tyler tilted his head slightly, studying her now with more interest than before. Let us see what you have learned, he said, his tone light, almost amused. Rachel nodded once. The mat beneath them felt quieter somehow, the energy shifting into something more focused, more deliberate. Around them, conversations faded. Movements slowed. Even those who pretended not to watch found themselves paying attention. Because somewhere between the laughter and the quiet corrections, something had stopped feeling like a joke. And in that space, where certainty usually lived, a new question had begun to form. Not spoken. Not yet. But impossible to ignore. The room did not feel the same anymore. And neither did the people in it. Tyler Briggs stepped onto the mat with the kind of calm confidence that came from years of being the standard everyone else chased, his shoulders loose, his breathing steady, his eyes carrying that quiet certainty that he had nothing to prove and nothing to lose. Around them, the subtle hum of the academy faded into something more focused, more deliberate, as conversations died down and movements slowed just enough for attention to gather without being called. Coach Derek did not say anything, but his presence shifted closer, his arms still crossed, his gaze sharper now, no longer dismissive, no longer casual. Rachel Monroe stood across from Tyler, her posture unchanged, her expression neutral, as if the weight of expectation pressing in from every side simply did not register. We will keep it controlled, Tyler said, his tone light, almost polite, though the edge underneath was unmistakable, the kind that came from knowing he was being watched, from knowing this moment was not just another drill. Rachel gave a small nod, her eyes steady, her breathing even, as if she had already settled into a rhythm no one else could hear. They stepped forward at the same time, not rushed, not hesitant, just precise. Tyler initiated the movement first, smooth and practiced, the kind of entry that usually dictated everything that followed. Rachel responded without resistance, not pushing back, not forcing anything, simply adjusting in a way that absorbed the motion rather than stopped it. It was subtle, almost too subtle for most to catch, but Coach Derek saw it immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly. Tyler continued, increasing the pace just a fraction, testing, measuring. Rachel matched it without effort, her movements compact, efficient, never exaggerated. A few students exchanged glances, their earlier amusement replaced by something quieter, something less certain. Relax, Tyler said, almost casually, though there was a flicker of something else now, something he did not name. Rachel did not respond. She did not need to. The next exchange came. Faster, Tyler shifting direction, attempting to guide the sequence into something more complex, something that would expose hesitation, expose inexperience. But Rachel did not hesitate. She adjusted again, a small step, a slight turn, her hands moving with quiet precision, not reacting after the fact, but arriving exactly where they needed to be before the moment fully formed. The room felt it then. Not a mistake. Not luck. Something else. Something practiced. Something controlled. Tyler paused for half a second, just long enough for the shift to register. He smiled again, but it did not reach his eyes this time. "Not bad," he said, his voice still steady, though the confidence behind it had begun to change shape. Around them, no one laughed anymore. The space had tightened, attention pulling inward, the air itself feeling heavier, as if waiting. Rachel remained still for a brief moment, her gaze calm, her posture relaxed, giving nothing away. Then they moved again. This time, Tyler committed more fully, his motion sharper, more decisive, the kind that usually closed distance and ended uncertainty. But Rachel did not retreat. She stepped in, just slightly, her timing exact, her balance centered in a way that did not need correction. There was no force in it, no aggression, just alignment, just control. Tyler adjusted, attempting to regain the rhythm, but something had shifted. The sequence no longer belonged entirely to him. Coach Derek's expression hardened, not in anger, but in recognition. He had seen this before, though not often, and never like this, not from someone who had walked in wearing worn sneakers and a quiet presence that invited dismissal. A student near the edge of the mat whispered, barely audible. "What is she doing?" No one answered. Because no one had a name for it yet. The movement continued, each exchange tightening, each adjustment revealing just a little more. Rachel's breathing remained steady, unchanged, her focus absolute without appearing intense. Tyler circled slightly, resetting his stance, buying himself a moment to reassert control, but the certainty that had filled his posture earlier was no longer untouched. Rachel waited, not pressing, not advancing, simply present in a way that did not give him an opening to exploit. The silence in the room deepened. Even the usual background sounds seemed to fade, replaced by the quiet awareness that something important was unfolding, something no one had expected when the door first opened. Coach Derek took a slow step forward, his eyes locked on the two figures at the center of the mat. He did not interrupt. Not yet. Because he needed to see what came next. And somewhere beneath the surface of that controlled exchange, beneath the measured breathing and careful movement, the truth was beginning to rise, steady and undeniable. Rachel Monroe was not here to learn. She was here for something else entirely. And whatever it was about to reveal itself in a way no one in that room would forget. Tyler moved again, but this time there was no casual rhythm behind it, no quiet assurance that he controlled the outcome, only a sharper focus, a need to reclaim something that had begun to slip from his grasp. His steps were quicker now, his movements more deliberate, each action carrying a hint of urgency that had not been there before. Rachel Monroe did not mirror that urgency. She remained steady, her breathing unchanged, her posture balanced in a way that seemed almost effortless, as if the increasing tension in the room had no effect on her at all. The distance between them closed for a brief moment, and in that instant, something shifted completely. Tyler initiated another controlled sequence, aiming to guide the exchange back into familiar territory, but Rachel adjusted before the movement could fully settle. It was not fast in the way the room expected. It was precise. A small shift of weight, a subtle redirection, her hands moving with exact timing, not reacting, but arriving. Tyler's motion stalled. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Just enough for the balance to change hands. A quiet sound escaped from someone at the edge of the mat, not quite a gasp, not quite a word. Coach Derek leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on the exchange, his expression no longer guarded but intent, calculating, recognizing something he could not ignore anymore. Tyler attempted to recover, adjusting his stance, trying to reset the sequence, but the rhythm was no longer his to command. Rachel moved again, not with force, not with aggression, but with clarity, guiding the moment exactly where it needed to go. And then it happened. Tyler's hand tapped the mat. Once. Then again. A clear signal. The kind that did not leave room for interpretation. The sound echoed softly against the polished surface, but in the silence that had fallen over the room, it carried farther than it should have. No one spoke. No one moved. The entire academy seemed to hold its breath at the same time. Tyler froze for a second, his hand still resting against the mat, his expression caught between disbelief and realization. He exhaled slowly, pulling back, creating distance that had not existed a moment before. Rachel released the position immediately, stepping back without hesitation, without display, as if the outcome had been expected all along. She did not look at him for validation. She did not look at the room for reaction. She simply stood there, calm, composed, untouched by the shift that had just rippled through every person watching. Coach Derek took another step forward, his voice absent now, replaced by a silence that spoke louder than anything he could have said. He looked at Tyler, then at Rachel, then back again, as if trying to reconcile two realities that no longer aligned. Around them, the students remained still, their earlier certainty gone, replaced by something heavier, something quieter. One of them finally whispered, barely audible. "That was not supposed to happen." No one responded. Because they all knew it was true. Tyler stood up slowly, adjusting his GI, his movements controlled but no longer effortless. He looked at Rachel again, this time not with amusement, not with confidence, but with a question he did not voice. Rachel met his gaze for a brief second, her eyes steady, offering no explanation, no apology, no need to justify what had just taken place. The silence stretched, filling the room with a weight that pressed into every corner. Coach Derek finally spoke, his voice lower than before, stripped of its earlier edge. "Again," he said. It was not a challenge. It was a demand for understanding. Tyler hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before stepping forward once more. But something had changed. Not just in him. In all of them. Because the moment that had just unfolded could not be undone, could not be dismissed, could not be explained away as luck or coincidence. It was real. It was undeniable. And it had rewritten everything they thought they understood about the woman standing quietly in front of them. Rachel did not move immediately. She took a slow breath, her eyes calm, her posture unchanged. As if the outcome of the next moment did not carry any more weight than the last. Around her, the room waited, suspended in that fragile space between disbelief and realization. And in that silence, one truth settled in, quiet but absolute. They had not been watching a beginner. They had been watching something far more dangerous. Something that did not announce itself. Something that did not need to. And now, it was no longer hidden. The room did not return to normal after that second tap, because something deeper had been disturbed, something that could not simply reset with another drill or another instruction. Coach Derek stood still for a moment longer, his eyes fixed on Rachel Monroe, no longer evaluating her as a student, but trying to understand her as something else entirely. Around them, the students remained quiet, their earlier assumptions gone, replaced by a careful attention that bordered on respect but had not yet found its voice. Tyler Briggs stepped back fully this time, adjusting his GI with slower, more deliberate movements, his confidence no longer effortless, but reshaped into something more grounded. He looked at Rachel again, not with challenge, not with doubt, but with a quiet acknowledgement that did not need to be spoken. Rachel stood where she was, calm, composed, her breathing steady, as if the shift in the room had nothing to do with her. She had not asked for attention. She had not reacted to it. And that, more than anything, unsettled the space around her. "Line up," Coach Derek said finally, his voice steady, but different now, stripped of its earlier edge, carrying a tone that was more measured, more intentional. The class responded immediately, forming a straight line along the edge of the mat, but the usual energy was gone. No chatter. No side glances. Only quiet awareness. Derek stepped in front of them, his posture still strong, but his presence no longer centered on control alone. It carried something else now. Consideration. He paused, letting the silence settle, his gaze moving briefly across the students before returning to Rachel. "What you saw just now," he said slowly, choosing each word with care, "was not about strength." The room listened. No one interrupted. It was not about speed either, he continued. And it was definitely not about experience in the way most of you think. Tyler lowered his gaze slightly, absorbing the words without resistance. Rachel remained still, her expression unchanged. Derek took a small step forward, his voice quieter now, but carrying further. It was about control. Real control. The kind you cannot fake. The kind you cannot rush. A few students shifted subtly, the weight of that statement settling in. Because they had all trained for control. But what they had just witnessed was something else. Something beyond drills. Beyond repetition. Most people, Derek went on, come into a place like this thinking they need to prove something. They try to show strength. They try to win moments. He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked directly at a few of the students who had laughed earlier. But the people who actually understand this, they do not need to prove anything. The words hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Rachel's presence seemed to anchor them, though she had not moved, had not spoken. Derek turned toward her fully now, his expression no longer guarded. You did not come here to prove anything, did you? He asked. Rachel met his gaze, calm as ever. No, she said simply. The answer landed with more weight than any explanation could have. The room felt it. Tyler looked up again, studying her with a different kind of focus now, not trying to measure her, but trying to understand what he had missed. Derek nodded slowly, as if something had just been confirmed. Then why are you here? He asked. The question was not sharp. It was genuine. Rachel paused for a brief moment, her eyes shifting slightly, not away, but inward, as if considering how much to reveal. To see if this place still remembers what matters, she said quietly. The words settled into the room like a final piece of something no one realized they were missing. A few students exchanged glances, uncertain at first, then thoughtful. Because the question was no longer about her. It was about them. Derek exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. He turned back toward the class, his voice steady again, but now carrying something deeper. Class is not over, he said. But things are going to be different. No one questioned it. No one needed to. Because the shift had already happened. Rachel stepped back toward the edge of the mat, her presence no longer ignored, no longer dismissed, but not elevated either. She did not seek that. She simply returned to stillness, as if the moment had passed and there was nothing more to take from it. But the room knew better. Because what had just unfolded was not just a demonstration. It was a reminder. Quiet. Precise. Unavoidable. And in that silence, one truth remained, clear and undeniable. Respect had not been given. It had been revealed. The class resumed, but nothing about it felt the same, because once a room has witnessed something real, it cannot pretend it did not happen. Movements continued across the mat, drills restarted, voices returned, but softer now, more careful, as if everyone had become aware of something they could not quite name. Rachel Monroe stood near the edge again, exactly where she had begun, her presence quiet, her posture unchanged, as if the shift she had caused did not belong to her at all. But the room knew better. Coach Derek moved through the students with a different pace now, his instructions still precise, but his tone measured, no longer shaped by assumption. Every correction he gave carried more weight, more intention, as if he was no longer teaching just technique, but something deeper beneath it. Tyler Briggs returned to training as well, pairing with another advanced student, but his movements had changed. The sharp confidence was still there, but tempered now, grounded, as if the certainty he once carried without question had been replaced by something more aware. He glanced toward Rachel once, then again, not out of curiosity, but out of respect he had not expected to feel. Across the room, a few of the students who had laughed earlier kept their distance, their voices quieter, their posture more reserved. One of them, the same one who had made the comment about the beginner class, adjusted his stance nervously as he watched Rachel from afar. Should we ask her to join? he whispered to his partner. The response came quickly, but not confidently. I do not think we are ready for that. The words were meant as a joke, but they did not land that way. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Rachel did not move toward anyone. She did not step forward to demonstrate. She did not speak unless spoken to. She simply observed, her eyes steady, her attention focused in a way that made even simple movements seem more deliberate. It was not dominance. It was not control over others. It was control over herself. And that, more than anything, reshaped the space around her. Coach Derek eventually stopped near her, his presence no longer imposing, but thoughtful. He watched her for a moment before speaking. You see things most people miss, he said, his voice low, not for the room, but for her. Rachel tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the statement without confirming it. Most people are too busy trying to prove something, she replied quietly. Derek let out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, though there was no humor in it. That includes me, he admitted. The honesty in his voice did not go unnoticed. Rachel looked at him for a brief second, her expression unchanged, but there was a faint shift in her eyes, something that resembled understanding. You built this place, she said. That matters. Derek glanced around the academy, at the students, at the structure he had spent years shaping. For the first time that day, his posture softened. It does, he said. But sometimes you forget why you started. The words lingered between them, quiet but heavy. Rachel did not respond immediately. She simply watched the class continue, her gaze moving from one student to another, observing without judgment. They are good, she said finally. But they are listening to the wrong things. Derek followed her gaze, seeing his students through a different lens now. He saw the tension in their movements, the need to impress, the subtle competition that had nothing to do with growth. He had seen it before, but he had allowed it, encouraged it even, believing it built strength. Now, it looked different. Now, it looked incomplete. And what should they be listening to, he asked. Rachel's eyes remained on the mat, her voice calm. The space between the movements, she said. Derek frowned slightly, not in disagreement, but in thought. It was not a simple answer. It was not something he could turn into instruction easily. But it was real. He could feel it now, just as he had felt it during those quiet moments on the mat. Across the room, Tyler finished another exchange and stepped back, his breathing steady, his focus sharper than before. He walked over slowly, stopping a few feet from Rachel and Derek, his posture respectful. His presence no longer carrying the same dominance. You are not just visiting, are you? He asked. Rachel turned her gaze toward him, meeting his eyes without hesitation. No, she said simply. Tyler nodded once, as if that was all the confirmation he needed. He hesitated for a moment, then added, you should stay. The room seemed to quiet again, not completely, but enough for the moment to settle. Rachel looked at him, then at Derek, then back at the mat where the students continued to train, their movements already changing in small, almost invisible ways. She did not answer right away. Because the decision was not about them. It never had been. And in that quiet pause, something else became clear. She had not come there to be seen. She had come to see. And now that she had, the question was no longer what they thought of her. It was what she would choose to do next. The room did not know it yet, but it was waiting for that answer. The class resumed, but nothing about it felt the same, because once a room has witnessed something real, it cannot pretend it did not happen. Movements continued across the mat, drills restarted, voices returned, but softer now, more careful, as if everyone had become aware of something they could not quite name. Rachel Monroe stood near the edge again, exactly where she had begun, her presence quiet, her posture unchanged, as if the shift she had caused did not belong to her at all. But the room knew better. Coach Derek moved through the students with a different pace now, his instructions still precise, but his tone measured, no longer shaped by assumption. Every correction he gave carried more weight, more intention, as if he was no longer teaching just technique, but something deeper beneath it. Tyler Briggs returned to training as well, pairing with another advanced student, but his movements had changed. The sharp confidence was still there, but tempered now, grounded, as if the certainty he once carried without question had been replaced by something more aware. He glanced toward Rachel once, then again, not out of curiosity, but out of respect he had not expected to feel. Across the room, a few of the students who had laughed earlier kept their distance, their voices quieter, their posture more reserved. One of them, the same one who had made the comment about the beginner class, adjusted his stance nervously as he watched Rachel from afar. "Should we ask her to join?" he whispered to his partner. The response came quickly, but not confidently. "I do not think we are ready for that." The words were meant as a joke, but they did not land that way. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Rachel did not move toward anyone. She did not step forward to demonstrate. She did not speak unless spoken to. She simply observed, her eyes steady, her attention focused in a way that made even simple movements seem more deliberate. It was not dominance. It was not control over others. It was control over herself. And that, more than anything, reshaped the space around her. Coach Derek eventually stopped near her, his presence no longer imposing, but thoughtful. He watched her for a moment before speaking. "You see things most people miss," he said, his voice low, not for the room, but for her. Rachel tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the statement without confirming it. "Most people are too busy trying to prove something," she replied quietly. Derek let out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, though there was no humor in it. "That includes me," he admitted. The honesty in his voice did not go unnoticed. Rachel looked at him for a brief second, her expression unchanged, but there was a faint shift in her eyes, something that resembled understanding. "You built this place," she said. "That matters." Derek glanced around the academy, at the students, at the structure he had spent years shaping. For the first time that day, his posture softened. "It does," he said. "But sometimes you forget why you started." The words lingered between them, quiet but heavy. Rachel did not respond immediately. She simply watched the class continue, her gaze moving from one student to another, observing without judgment. "They are good," she said finally. "But they are listening to the wrong things." Derek followed her gaze, seeing his students through a different lens now. He saw the tension in their movements, the need to impress, the subtle competition that had nothing to do with growth. He had seen it before, but he had allowed it, encouraged it even, believing it built strength. Now, it looked different. Now, it looked incomplete. And what should they be listening to? He asked. Rachel's eyes remained on the mat, her voice calm. "The space between the movements," she said. Derek frowned slightly, not in disagreement, but in thought. It was not a simple answer. It was not something he could turn into instruction easily. But it was real. He could feel it now, just as he had felt it during those quiet moments on the mat. Across the room, Tyler finished another exchange and stepped back, his breathing steady, his focus sharper than before. He walked over slowly, stopping a few feet from Rachel and Derek, his posture respectful, his presence no longer carrying the same dominance. "You are not just visiting, are you?" he asked. Rachel turned her gaze toward him, meeting his eyes without hesitation. "No," she said simply. Tyler nodded once, as if that was all the confirmation he needed. He hesitated for a moment, then added, "You should stay." The room seemed to quiet again, not completely, but enough for the moment to settle. Rachel looked at him, then at Derek, then back at the mat where the students continued to train, their movements already changing in small, almost invisible ways. She did not answer right away. Because the decision was not about them. It never had been. And in that quiet pause, something else became clear. She had not come there to be seen. She had come to see. And now that she had, the question was no longer what they thought of her. It was what she would choose to do next. The room did not know it yet, but it was waiting for that answer. The question lingered in the air long after Tyler spoke, not because it demanded an immediate answer, but because everyone in that room understood that whatever Rachel Monroe decided next would matter more than anything that had already happened. The class continued moving, but the rhythm had changed in ways that could not be undone. Students no longer rushed through drills to impress. They slowed down, listening more carefully, watching not just their partners but themselves, as if trying to find that invisible space Rachel had mentioned. Coach Derek noticed it immediately. He walked along the edge of the mat, his eyes scanning each pair, not correcting as often, not interrupting as quickly. He was observing now, the way she had been observing when she first walked in. It was not lost on him that the entire room had shifted because of someone who had said almost nothing. Rachel remained where she was, standing quietly near the boundary line of the mat, her arms relaxed at her sides, her presence steady, grounded. She watched the students move with a calm focus, noticing the subtle changes, the hesitation replaced with intention, the unnecessary force slowly fading into something more controlled. Tyler stepped back into training again, but this time his movements carried a different quality. He was no longer performing. He was listening. Each adjustment he made was smaller, more precise, as if he was testing something new, something he had only just begun to understand. After a few minutes, he stopped and looked toward Rachel again, not expecting anything from her, just acknowledging her presence as part of the space now. Coach Derek eventually returned to the center of the room and clapped his hands once, drawing the class back together. The students gathered quickly, forming a half circle around him, but their posture had changed. They stood more evenly, more balanced, less rigid. Derek looked at them for a long moment before speaking. "What happened today," he said slowly, "was not a lesson you will find in a manual." The room was silent. No one shifted. No one looked away. "You all train hard," he continued. "You follow instructions. You push yourselves." He paused, his gaze moving across the group. "But somewhere along the way, some of you started chasing the wrong things." A few students lowered their eyes slightly, recognizing themselves in those words. Derek did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Strength is not loud," he said. "Skill is not something you show off. And respect is not something you demand." The words settled deep, heavier than any correction he had given before. He turned slightly, his eyes finding Rachel again, not as an outsider, but as someone who had just reminded him of something he had nearly forgotten. "Sometimes," he added, "it takes someone walking in from the outside to show you what you have been missing." The students followed his gaze, all of them now looking at Rachel, but this time there was no judgment, no laughter, no dismissal. Only respect. Quiet and real. Rachel met their attention calmly, not absorbing it, not pushing it away, simply allowing it to exist without changing who she was. Tyler stepped forward slightly, breaking the stillness. "If you stayed," he said carefully, "you would make everyone here better." The statement was not exaggerated. It was not meant to impress. It was honest. Rachel looked at him, then at the rest of the class, her gaze moving slowly, taking in the faces that had once dismissed her, now waiting without expectation. She took a small breath, her expression unchanged, her posture still grounded in that same quiet certainty. "This place can be good," she said finally. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Derek listened closely, his attention fixed. "But only if you remember why you are here," she continued. A silence followed, deeper than before, because this time it was not filled with uncertainty. It was filled with understanding. Rachel stepped forward just slightly, not onto the center of the mat, but enough to shift the space. "Not to prove something," she said. "Not to win moments." Her eyes moved across the room, steady, calm. "But to learn control. The kind that stays when no one is watching." No one spoke. No one needed to. The truth in her words settled into each of them differently, but it stayed. Derek nodded slowly, his expression no longer guarded, no longer uncertain. Then stay, he said quietly. Help us remember. The request was not about authority. It was not about ownership. It was about respect. Rachel held his gaze for a brief moment, considering not the offer, but what it meant. Around her, the room waited again, but this time without pressure, without expectation. Just patience. Because something had already been given. Something that could not be taken back. Rachel looked down at the mat for a second, then back up, her eyes steady. She did not answer right away. And in that pause, the room understood something important. Whatever she chose, it would not be for recognition. It would not be for approval. It would be because it mattered. And that was something none of them could control. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. Full of everything that had changed in a single afternoon. And for the first time since she walked through that door, no one in that room tried to define who Rachel Monroe was. They simply waited to see what she would do. Next.